Do you know who the real innovators are? C grade students. A grade students are oftenly praised for their intelligence and academic abilities, but it is the C grade students who are actually innovative and creative. So, if you are a C grade student, or if you have ever failed a test in your life and been criticized for it, keep listening. So, they did a study a few years ago, and this study was actually measuring the average GPA of American millionaires. And the average GPA of American millionaires came out to be, then guess what it is? Do you think that it's super high? Because that is the common belief that we have, that the higher marks you have, the higher grades you score, that means you're an intelligent person. That means you are a very super intelligent being. But it actually came out to be, the average American GPA came out to be 2.4 or 9. I think it was between that. Now let's take 2.9 even for that example. It's not surprisingly high. It's average in class. And actually, the more they extended the study, and they found out that the more marks you score in life, there are two things that we kind of measure success by, generally speaking. I'm not saying that if you qualify these capabilities, then you are successful in life. Success has a very personal definition to every other person. But they measure, generally we say that if a person is rich or famous, rich means millionaire, famous means people know you, then generally we think that, okay, these are successful people. Now, they did the study and they found out that valedictorians, people who actually score very high on their tests, they have a less chance. They rarely become rich or famous. This is the word that they use. That they rarely become it. And in fact, the thing that American millionaires, the number one skill that they had that was common between them, was not scoring high grades or intelligence. It was grit. Now, welcome to our series on why the education system is setting us up to fail. My name is Armughan, and you're watching TruthQuest. And in this addition to our series, we are discussing why C grade students are better in life than A grade students. And there are many reasons to this. There's a whole book, I think, by Robert Kiyosaki as well, who discusses this entire concept. Like, the more higher you score in your academic career, it actually does you reverse in life. And the very big and the very easy thing to understand here is that the reason this happens is because generally the education system, it's a very controlled environment. It's a controlled environment, and we have talked about its history in the first edition to this series. And in the previous one, we have talked about how it actually kills your creativity in a sense. And actually, it's a very controlled environment. And in that controlled environment, yes, there are certain things that you learn, but most of the things that you learn are very good for that environment. They're actually, the marks, the grades, and everything, the standardized testings, very good for the environment. You'll actually do very good in that environment. What happens is, life is not a controlled environment, and the education system don't train you for life in that sense, for real life, for ground reality. They don't train you for that. They train you for scores. They train you for, okay, memorize this chemical formula, or they train you for certain different things, but they don't train you for that real life, the skills that you need in real life to excel. Skills that, like American millionaire, as the study said, grit. They don't teach you that. In fact, they teach you the opposite of grit. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the reason this happens is that C grade, mostly the students who are backbenchers and who don't get that high of a grade, and they don't get that much praise in their school system. I'll give you the example of Einstein, where Einstein, think about this, Einstein's mathematics professor called him a lazy dog. Einstein is arguably one of the most genius person of the last century, and his mathematics professor called him a lazy dog because he could not do mathematics at the speed that everybody else was doing. So generally, you think people who are successful, not just in the in the millionaire type of successful or the famous type of successful, or you take actors, you take You take actors, whether you take physicists, whether you take uh, genius people in any field, people who are at the top of their field. Mostly you'll notice this is a trend that you'll notice among them. It's not like it happens every time, but it's a very common trend that most of them were actually very bad in school. They actually they couldn't fit in with the school environment. Steve Jobs was a dropout. Bill Gates was a dropout. And I'm not saying people actually get offended at this. I think now that I'm not saying you use them as a standard and you become a college dropout as well. I'm not saying that. I'm also not saying that it's of no use, the entire education system. All I'm saying the way that it is set up is a way that it's going to teach you a few skills, but most of them will actually work in your opposition. Most of them, and actually, if you're not able to be successful in the traditional classroom environment, chances are you have a higher chance at life. It doesn't generally people think they have low self-esteem when it comes to this area, that they think, okay, actually I could not actually I was not a good academic person, so I was not a good intellectual, or I was not an intelligent person, quote unquote intelligence. That means I don't have a good chance at life. No, it actually works the opposite, because you see people who are like at the top of their at the top of their fields, whether that's filmmaking, whether that is business, whether that is genius capabilities, and all of these people, they actually sucked really bad in the classroom. They were not made for the classroom environment, and most of the things that these people learned were by themselves. So they were autodidacts. Autodidacts is a person who's a self-taught person, so they were autodidacts. And the reason these people have such a great, and they're C grade students, and the reason A grade students are more successful in the academic world, in the educational world, not that much successful in life in that sense. So we mean success in a very broad way, in a very vague way, right here. So the reason that is because one of the reasons is what I call the compilation principle. And it's not the compilation, it's the compilation principle. And the compilation principle is that the entire education system is built on on the on the idea that you have to comply. There are rules, comply to them. Don't question them. Don't try to make them better. Don't try to come up with your own, because you don't have the right to do that. Comply to them. And the only level of success that you can have in a controlled educational environment is if you comply to the rules. That is the only way, and it actually works against you in the real world environment. That is that the more we talk about conformity a lot. We talk about how conformity actually limits you. If you're complying, you are actually conforming. If you're complying to the rules, if you're complying to the all these things around you, actually you are not a good person to you're not a good person to come up with new. You're not just a thinker, but good you're not a good innovator in that sense. Whatever your field is, you won't be a good innovator. I can bet on that, because you're complying. The more you comply, the less you can actually see the room for improvement, the less you can actually see the places where you can actually improve, innovate, come up with better solutions. So the first one is compilation principle. It's the principle of listen to me. The teacher has an authoritative role, and the teacher is saying, okay, listen to me, listen to what I'm saying. This is what you should learn, and we'll take your test on this, and this is all it is. And you don't actually question the principal or anybody else, any authorities in the education system, in the educational environment. The second thing is GPA. They also did this study. It was a very nice study, actually. I forgot the links. I'll add more links if you want to study about it. And this study was that they call this the innovation intention. And the innovation intention is your ability to come up with new answers, your ability to come up with answers or connections where people cannot see it. And they did this study among students, and what they found out was that the higher GPA you had, the lower your innovation intention. And the reason they gave it was because was what we discussed in the previous video as well. I think we'll expand a bit on it here too. That what the school system, what IQ tests, what all these things, what they test you on is convergence thinking. Convergence thinking is your ability to come to a single solution, your ability to come to a solution that is not that new. It's just it's you have a lot of different problems and you can connect the dots, and it's not even connecting the dots, it's just coming to a single one pointed solution. And there's an opposite side of it, that is divergence thinking. And divergence is where innovation comes in. Divergence is your ability to where uh, if I give you a question like I don't remember the exact question that could actually fit in this situation nicely, but generally it's about you being creative. It's you imagining the possibilities and you coming up with newer possibilities, and you coming up with it's when Einstein said that logic will get you from A to B, imagination will get you anywhere. That's, I think, is a very very accurate description of what convergence thinking is versus divergence thinking is. Convergence thinking is about logic, and I'm not saying we definitely need logic. We need to base our arguments on logic. We need to become logical and rational thinkers in that sense, but logic will limit you in the sense that it's only A to B. Imagination won't limit you. It's boundless. It's anywhere. And imagination, in this sense, is an example of divergence thinking. So all our IQ tests, all our standardized tests, what happens when you're taking a test, an MCQ? It's about one answer that is right. All the other answers are wrong. What happens when you are to give an answer to a question in an exam? What is that? It's one answer that is right. Everything else is wrong. No matter how creative your answer might be, it's wrong because you're actually being creative. Don't be creative to give us one answer, for God's sake. That is what they're telling you. So actually, your GPA, your marks, your grades, they're actually opposite to what they call the innovation intention. They are inversely related. So the higher GPA you have, the less innovation intention you have, the less your intent will be to innovate, the less your intent will be to come up with newer solutions. So with that said, one other thing that actually works against you is formal education is beyond a point. It is designed for people who don't know how to handle uncertainty. And this is where I'll connect this to the example of the American millionaire, that is grit and uncertainty. Gritty people are people who know how to handle uncertainty. Gritty people are people who know how to deal with factors that go haywire sometime, and how to deal with that sense, because the truth is life is uncertain. The question the education system, it teaches you answers. It teaches you a lot of answers to the questions, and then it asks you the same questions in the exam, and it tells you, okay, if you know the answer, that means yes, that means we are certain, and you're certain on the answers as well, and we agree. And it teaches you the same kind of things. That is actually beating out the capability for you to handle uncertainty. And I call that anti-fragility. It's not, I borrowed that concept from Nassim Taleb, and I think we have discussed about this in some other podcast as well, where the more dependent on logic or rational thinking you are, the less anti-fragile you would be, the less capable of handling uncertainty you would be. And I'm not saying this doesn't mean that logic is bad, rationality is bad. We should flush it down the drain. It's very good. We need it. We need to base our arguments. We need to base our answers on logic and rationality. But the thing is, it is I'll just throw some neurology or the brain science at you, that what logic and rationality, it's more of a function of the prefrontal cortex. It is your thinking mind. It is your analytical mind. Creativity is the opposite of that. Creativity is more about when you're analytical, you're thinking, your monkey mind shuts down, and where you're in the state of connecting ideas. And from a perspective of brain waves, alpha, the brain wave that is naturally that we are living on, from a day to day, from an analytical basis, that is beta, not alpha. Beta is, I think it is up to 10 hertz. I think I might be wrong. I might be wrong on that. But beta brainwave activity is when we are being analytical. creativity is not a high when your brain parts of your brain are more when your brain is predominantly more working on beta. It's not creativity is not going to be high at that time. Creativity is more high when you go into the lower brain waves, which are alpha, theta, and delta. When you go below them, that is when your creativity becomes higher. That is when you become more creative, because that allows the brain one thing that happens is when the prefrontal cortex and cognitive activity in the prefrontal cortex shuts down, your brain actually there's a part of the brain which actually searches for idea, and as it shuts down, it's kind of like a state of flow, and a state of creative effortless effort comes in. That's how flow works. The flow is the science of effortless, the state of effortless effort. And the more flowy, the more that part of the less cognitive load you have on yourself, the more your brain can expand and search for new possibilities. So in that sense, prefrontal cortex dominant thinking is rational thinking, it's logical thinking. In that sense, the more rational and logically minded you are, the more slightly to the one side, that is the rational side you are, the less your creativity and your ability to think divergently would be tuned in. So that is in that explaining connecting the dots. A grade student, more convergent, more focused on coming up with the answer that you've been taught, and a bit of logic and rationality in there. Or maybe you are an academic intellectual and you're based on that. But divergence thinking is what we need in life. We have divergence thinking is when generally A grade student, they have a lot of plans. You can come up with plans and logic plans like A to B. This is how we're gonna go, and we need that. That's important. But the more you're relying on them, the less certainty the less you're able to handle uncertainty. And the very last reason that I'm gonna give you in this was actually a study done as well, and this was more about what are your motivations. And if you're a C student, they said that you're intrinsically motivated. But if you're an A student, you're extrinsically motivated, for in that sense that all that motivates you to become an A student and you're studying so hard is marks. You want to get grades. And that is an extrinsic motivator. And the thing about extrinsic motivators is that they are very good up to a point. Well, up to a point, they motivate you, but up to a point, they can't. What happens is, we talked about this in another video podcast as well, that what happens is, if you don't have money, for example, up to a point, it will motivate you. But until your basic needs are met, like you don't have to worry about where the next meal is going to come from, then money is not going to be a motivator for you. It's not going to motivate you to do certain things. So A grade students, generally, they are more extrinsically motivated. Grades, money, and stuff like that. So, but the thing is, extrinsic motivators, they are good at motivating you, but they stop at one level. Intrinsic motivators are more like purpose, passion, curiosity, right? These things. And the more intrinsically motivated, all of the great people in this world, they were more intrinsically motivated. Because if they were extrinsically motivated, they have this certain amount of money in their life and they have that certain amount of safety, security, they would have stopped there. Great things happen beyond that level. Great innovations happen beyond that level. So in order to go beyond that level, you cannot be extrinsically motivated. You have to be intrinsically motivated. That means that your internal motivators, that is purpose, your passion, your the things that you are curious about, these things have to be lined up. And I'm gonna and you don't know, like, if you don't know how to become intrinsically motivated, you don't know what your curiosity, what your passion, what your purpose is. I made a worksheet that I call Playing with Purpose Worksheet. And you can get it for free, and you can go through the exercises, and they're actually going to help you come up with your curiosities, and we're going to turn them into your passions, and we're going to turn them into your purpose ultimately. You can download that for free in the description below. And with that said, if you're a C grade student, don't have low self-esteem and don't doubt yourself. You're actually starting from the same path, and in some ways you're actually stronger than you're actually stronger because you're good at handling failure. You're good at handling failure. You have the intent to innovate, and you can do great things in your life. That should not be a reason. Grades should not be a reason to stop you from doing great things in your life. Now, I'm going to see you in the next edition of Why the Education System is Setting You Up to Fail. Till then, take care. If you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to watch this video on my side. It also relates to physics, philosophy, and personal development. And also, don't forget to subscribe, continue seeking truth, and become a truth seeker.